Reddit's usually just a random spot on the internet where you scroll through memes, rants, and strange thoughts. But sometimes you stumble across stuff that makes you wish you hadn't. Sure, weird posts happen all the time, but a few of them are so terrifying, they stick with you long after. And before we get into it, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. And today, we're diving into some terrifying Reddit users and their stories that will haunt you. Jason in hell. At first, this just sounded like one of those harmless rants. You know, someone had a bad day, hopped on Reddit, and just needed to let off some steam. Nothing serious. But that's where everyone was wrong, because this post didn't end with a few angry comments and an edit saying, "Thanks for the upvotes." It turned into something real, something terrifying, and for the OP, it left a mark that's probably gonna stick for life. It all started when Jason in hell made a post in r/relationship advice saying, "I'm 30 male, having a hard time coping with my wife, 29 female, having cheated on me with our neighbor, 51 male. It has been 476 days since I confronted her about it. How do I know? Because every time I catch myself thinking about it, I tell myself, it's been X days, maybe you won't think about it tomorrow." So, to go back to the beginning, I'd just taken on a new project and new responsibilities at work. I was working a lot of hours, 60 plus per week, and was noticeably stressed. It was in May of 2015 that I noticed that she had added a password to her phone. When confronted about it, she told me it was because she was planning my Father's Day present and didn't want to ruin the surprise. About a week later, she came to me and told me that she felt guilty keeping a big secret from me and told me that she was having our neighbor, a contractor, build a home office for me as my present. It struck me as odd, as in our 6 years together, she has never said she felt guilty about anything and always insists that she never regrets anything in her life. Time goes on, her phone is still password protected, and things don't feel right. I see her using her phone and smiling to herself more and more often, but when I ask her what she is doing, she says nothing and puts her phone away. So, it turns out OP's wife was cheating on him with the neighbor, and he was barely holding it together. What's wild is he knew the exact number of days since he found out. That's how deep it hit him. In the next part, he explains how he discovered it, and let me tell you, the way his wife started acting made all this even more disturbing. So one morning, I wait for her to get in the shower and I grab her phone before it requires a password. I go through her messages and find that she is texting the neighbor. I am all covered in frosting. "You want to lick it off?" There were no other messages to the neighbor, but I found out later that was because she had set up her phone to delete messages after a certain amount of time. I felt uncomfortable with it, but I knew she had a perverted sense of humor, and I thought she would never do anything to hurt me. More time goes by, and the neighbor is spending more and more time at our house, but the office is being completed slower and slower. I can't help but worry that something isn't right, so I start checking her location using Google Timeline. It was at this point that I realized that there are large gaps in her GPS history because she was turning off her phone's GPS. Fast forward to July, and at this point, the paranoia is driving me nuts, so I tell her that I need to install new antivirus on her phone. While she has it unlocked for me, I install anti-theft software so I can remotely turn the GPS back on and set up AT&T Messenger back up and restore so I can read all her text messages from that point on my computer. The next day, my mother asks to spend time with my 2 kids, so my wife drops them off with her and has the day to herself. I watch my wife's activity from work as she spends the day trying to meet up with a neighbor but is unsuccessful because he is busy with another job site. That night, we get the kids back from my mom's house and we go out to dinner with the neighbor, his girlfriend, and his son. My wife and his girlfriend are having a good time drinking, laughing, and just joking around. His girlfriend mentions that she would like to see Magic Mike XXL. I say it's a good idea. I'll watch the kids so my wife and her can go. So my wife and her go, and the neighbor and I go back to my house so the kids can play video games together. The kids are back in my son's room playing games, and the neighbor is sitting across from me on the other couch. It is at this point that my wife starts texting him. She is describing sex acts she would like to perform with him, and he is reciprocating. She tells him to check his Snapchat, And at the time, I get a Snapchat from her too, and it is her f***ing herself in a bathroom stall. They keep talking, trying to figure out when they can meet up and have sex. They decide on Monday morning after I go to work. So in my head, I had already planned to pretend to leave and circle back to catch them. But then they tell each other that they love each other, and it is all I can do to not leap off the couch and knock them out. But I contain myself and continue reading the conversation unfolding in front of me. Then he tells her, "You're my girl now," to which she replies, "Always have been," ending with him writing, "and always will be." My wife and the neighbor's girlfriend returned from the movie, and I asked them politely to sit down. I then asked the kids to stay in my son's room and shut the door. I return to the living room and confront my wife and the neighbor. I say, "So, you two, love each other, huh?" My wife goes into full-blown denial mode, and the neighbor's girlfriend starts smacking him. I ask my wife if she has been texting him. She says no, so I show her the text messages. She admits to it, but says it was the first time it had gone that far. I ask my wife if she has sent him pictures. She says no, so I show her the picture. She admits it, but says it was the first time. I ask her if she is having sex with him, and she says no. Because I didn't wait to catch them having sex together, I didn't have evidence to prove her wrong, so that one stayed unresolved. I tell her that I'm leaving her. She tells me that she will make sure I never see my kids again if I do. She planned on using the fact that I'd attempted suicide in high school to prove me unfit to have the children. She continues to say that it was my fault for being so busy with work and stressed out, that she just wanted someone she could talk to. Then she gives me an ultimatum to decide what I'm going to do, or she will decide for me. The neighbor's girlfriend starts defending the two of them, saying that it couldn't have been serious if they weren't having sex, and that my wife and I are too perfect together to let this break us up. The neighbors go home, and my wife and I argue for the rest of the night about what we are going to do. We go to bed separately, having not resolved anything. We keep going back and forth on the subject all weekend, and finally settle on we were going to separate temporarily while we figure out what we want. I was going to stay in the house, and she was going to take the kids and go to her mom's house. That Monday, I go to work, and I get a text from her in the middle of a meeting with my bosses, stating that she had explained things to her kids, but that they were upset and I need to explain it to them also. I got home from work to find my kids crying. She had told them that mommy had to move out because dad was mad at her. When my son wanted to stay with me, she told him that he can't. My son put it together that if mommy has to move out because I'm mad at her and he must move out, then I must have been mad at him too. My daughter was crying because my son was. I don't think she was old enough to understand what was happening. Now, her behavior at this point is completely unacceptable, and you'll want to keep this part in mind because it ends up shaping the entire story. OP then starts to realize just how heavy this is going to be, not just for him, but for his entire family. It was at that moment I realized she was going to drag the kids through hell if I left her, so I swallowed my feelings and begged her to stay. She agreed and insisted that I apologize to our neighbors since we are still going to need to hang out with them because our sons are good friends. I hate it, but I do it anyway. We still hang out with them from time to time, and they come to our various birthdays and holiday parties, but I'd do anything for my kids, and I behave civil every time. Things died down for a while. I still think about it constantly. I worry how can I keep from making her so unhappy that she cheats on me again. Then, almost a year from the original incident, around Father's Day again, she sent him pictures again. She claims it was an accident, that she meant to send them to me instead. I don't fully believe her, but I move on anyway. Things have been quiet on that front for about 4 months now, but I still think about it constantly. This is going to sound stupid, but I feel like I have a part of my brain that I can't shut off. That is always thinking. I used to use that to solve programming problems, and it made me very good at my job, but ever since this incident, the only thing it thinks about is her and him and if I did the right thing. My job performance has suffered, and I feel like I haven't gotten sleep in months. I'm afraid that after this much time and the fact that I begged her back, that to say that I want a divorce now would only make her more vindictive towards my children and I. I just feel like I have put myself so deep in a hole that I can never get back out. I haven't really talked to anyone about this. I didn't want to talk to my mom about it because I felt like she would treat my wife differently, and I didn't need the two fighting any more than they already do. I tried talking to one friend about it, but his advice was to put my trust in God, but that was not much solace for me, as I am an atheist. So I have no clue what to do with my feelings or how to move on from this. By this point, everyone could see where I was heading. His wife clearly didn't want to fix anything, no couples therapy, no heart-to-hearts, just cold silence and threats. Reddit did what Reddit does. They flooded the comments telling him to get therapy, to lawyer up, to protect himself. And yeah, to get her help too, because that kind of threat doesn't come from nowhere. OP came back with a short update. Just a few lines, but it said everything. I'm taking your advice. Instead of trying to fix something she doesn't want to fix, she has refused counseling several times in the past before this even happened. I'm going to get myself and my kids out. I meet with an attorney next week. Thank you, everyone, for helping me see how far I had my head up my ass. Everyone on Reddit felt like they could finally breathe. After months of updates, drama, and emotional whiplash, OP had finally made the call. Divorce, full custody, and a fresh start. The comments were full of support. People were proud of him. He was finally moving on, finally putting himself and his kids first. But that peace, it faded into thin air before it even began. Just a few weeks later, everything came crashing down. His wife called 911. She told the operator something that would flip his entire world upside down, and whatever hope OP had for a clean start was suddenly gone.
Montgomery County 911, where's your emergency?
203 South Madison Street.
In what town?
Darlington.
Hey, what's going on there?
I just stabbed myself and I killed my two children.
You stabbed yourself and killed your two children?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what's your name?
Brandy Worley.
Brandy what?
Worley.
Okay. How do you spell your last name?
Worley.
And where are the children at?
In my daughter's room on the floor.
In your daughter's room on the floor? Okay. What's your phone number, Brandy? And what caused you to do this today?
My husband wanted a divorce and wanted to take my kid. I won't let him have my kid.
Okay, and how old are your children?
7 and 3.
10 and 3?
7.
7 and 3?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And where did you stab yourself at?
In the neck.
Okay. Are you bleeding?
Yeah, there's blood everywhere.
Okay, and where are you at?
In my living room.
You're in your living room?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and are you armed now with the knife still?
No, it's in my children's room.
She waited until the night he handed her the divorce papers. They weren't even sleeping in the same room anymore. He was downstairs trying to find some kind of peace in his basement. She was upstairs with the kids. And that's when she did it, while he was just a floor below, unaware of everything. She made sure he'd never get the chance to take the kids. She killed both of them. Her son Tyler, 7 years old. Her daughter, Charlie, just 3. And then she turned the knife on herself, stabbing her own neck. No signs, no warning, just silence. That night, the only sound in that house was of the OP downstairs, having no idea that everything he loved was already gone. By the time he made it upstairs, it was too late. Though the wife survived, and when the trial came, the court didn't hesitate. She was sentenced to 120 years in prison. She wasn't just going away, she was gone for life. At the same time, they treated her for severe mental health issues, and yeah, she had a long list of them. Things that probably should have been handled years ago, before it came to this. But by then, none of it mattered. Not to OP, not to anyone. Because nothing was ever bringing those kids back. After that, OP vanished. No updates, no comments, nothing. His account was deleted, like he just disappeared into the grief. And honestly, who could blame him? But then, 2 years later, out of nowhere, a new post appeared. It was OP. He came back with a heavy heart and way too much pain for one person to carry. And what did he have to say? It was the kind of thing that doesn't leave you after you read it. I'm doing better, and I continue to get better every day. The first thing you may notice is this is being posted from a different account. I deleted the u/Jason in Hell account in a knee-jerk reaction to seeing my Reddit post in the news. I guess the first question to answer is how am I doing? And to that, I would say I'm doing well. I have bad days, but I would think that is to be expected. It is just important that I, or anyone going through something, continue to use the support of friends and family as well as good coping skills to not let myself be completely defeated on those bad days. I won't lie, I struggled to get back to where I am. For some time, I refused to sleep because of the combination of fear of what I would wake up to and nightmares about that night. For a time, I used alcohol to sleep, but my family loved me enough to take it from me before it became a damaging and permanent habit. I was hospitalized because I did have thoughts of ending my life because I miss my children so much. From that, I learned that you should never be ashamed of your mental health, and not seeking treatment will only make it worse, not better. We have all heard it, but if you or a loved one is struggling, seek immediate assistance. Your life is too important to throw away in a moment of weakness. By putting off treatment, I only caused everything else in my life to suffer. I lost my job and became reclusive to the house. But don't worry, I have been back to work since December, and I have nearly regained my former position and salary, so I'm good and require no assistance. The second question would be, how do I feel about the sentencing? That is something that is harder to answer because no matter what the sentence, nothing will bring back my beloved children. Do I think she should have gotten the death penalty, which Indiana has? No, I do not. She wanted to die, and after 9 years of giving her what she wanted, when she wanted it, I was not going to give her another thing. Do I think the life sentence will have any appreciable effect on her? I don't know. One thing she has always stressed for the entire time that I knew her was that she lived her life without any regrets. Even after I caught her cheating on me, she continued to say she had no regrets. As for the ex-in-laws, they continue to be a problem to this day. Shortly after everything happened, they changed the locks on the home I was renting from them with my property still inside. After trying to civilly negotiate the return of the property, it was required that I involve law enforcement. That is an ongoing legal battle. A member of the family accused me of stealing property I had purchased from them prior to the death of the children and threatened to take action against me unless I paid double what I had already paid them. I alerted the authorities, and as far as I know, that is resolved. They continued to make visiting my children's grave difficult. During the 1-year anniversary, they sat in their truck and just watched me the whole time I was visiting the grave. Because of that, I don't visit the grave as often as I would like to. If I can impart on you something I've learned through all of this, it is that you should always take the time to be with the ones you love. It doesn't matter if they are asking you to read The Pokey Little Puppy for the millionth time or asking you to play Smash Bros, even though you both know they will wipe the floor with you every time. Just do it because you never know what time will be the last time. Always make sure they know how much you love them. I had the fortune that the last thing my children ever heard me say was, "I love you. Good night. I will see you in the morning." Jason made it through. He didn't let the grief destroy him, but it wasn't easy. In the end, he refused to give up. And maybe we can all learn from that. Life's short, and you never know what's coming. So take the time to be with the people you love, because you never know what might happen next. Worthless 319. After hearing that heartbreaking story, you're probably thinking things can't get worse. Well, brace yourself. The next Reddit user I'm covering is by far the most disturbing user I have covered in this series. He went by the username Worthless319, and his journey through Reddit is a raw, unfiltered, and gruesome look at an existential crisis, a slow descent into dread that'll make you question what it really means to lose your grip on reality. But it's not just him spiraling. The things he went on to do, they'll make you stop and take a long, hard look at the world we're living in. It all started in 2016 when he made a post in r/Buddhism saying, "How to bring an awareness into suffering." This post is crucial because it gives us a stark glimpse into his mental state, a window into the world he was living in. Another user, Answery, tried to offer some rational advice. They suggested he find a teacher, a guide to help him. But Worthless319's reply? It's chilling. He responded with, "The increase in worldly chaos is a reflection of my inner turmoil and recent failures. I am a messiah, whose sole purpose is to elevate humanity's consciousness and avoid self-annihilation. Crucifixion of the ego is a process of nature, no different than the rainfall or a flower blooming. It is what a human consciousness grows into. As per the lotus flower, to pay off karmic debts and sever the egoic self from samsara. I should have been practicing the past year, but I was in the darkest depression that exists. Extremely suicidal day after day, having severely and failing to fulfill the requirements. Recently, I fulfilled the requirements. That is why we are hanging on edge of a world war. To finish the process, all I must do is meditate. I'm very good at it. I get extremely high, and my consciousness expands rapidly. The problem is, when I finally choose to, my consciousness will expand and merge with the infinite one, and I will experience hellfire. The purest suffering that exists. My ego is extremely frightened and clings on as hard as possible. I am having trouble seeing the suchness and severe suffering for myself, but I know I must overcome for humanity, even though there is no I to experience the suffering. It is like leaping off the edge of a cliff, knowing you will reach the bottom, and it will hurt the whole way down, but you won't die. Quite the opposite, actually. It will invigorate you with life. I'm not sure how to make the leap, but I believe tomorrow is my day, given the universal sign of impending chaos from the eclipse. I believe Answery was ahead of all of us. He could tell something was off, something darker was going on with Worthless319. This wasn't just a guy having an existential crisis, no. Worthless319 had something far more complicated, and maybe even sinister, going on in his mind. So, Answery replied simply by saying, "Too much I thinking. Even your jihad against I creates more I. You need guidance to help you through the torturous territory of your own thinking. This sounds more like a mental health issue than a Buddhist one." This is how the story of Worthless319 starts. He did talk about normal things, like in one post, for example, he was talking about North Korea. Does North Korean leadership know what an eclipse is? Might they consider it an attack from the US? Well, as close to normal as it gets. However, right after this one post about North Korea, everything changed as he made a bone-chilling post in r/awakened. Fear of suffering / bringing an awareness into suffering. The innate truths behind the universe have been revealed to me. I have severely self-medicated to near death in the past, and I was awful at dealing with the pain. I couldn't remotely bring a non-judgmental awareness into it. Sitting on the edge of eternity, I see pure suffering, as awful as it gets once my life is over. It is my path to enlightenment, no different from Christ's, but I'm scared. I can't function anymore. I am so afraid of what comes after for me. Saying me is an odd thing though. Mere suffering exists, no sufferer is found. The deeds are, but no doer of the deeds is there. Nibbana is, but not the man that enters it. The path is, but no traveler on it is seen. I've read Be Here Now about 25 times front to back. Near the end it depicts Christ, and it says this trip requires total suffering, but it's got to be suffering that is no suffering. It also says you've got to go the whole suffering trip, but you can't be the guy who is suffering. I understand this means the physical body and ego will die, but how can one manage to suffer without suffering? I'm so caught up on this, I can't step over the line into the infinite. Things quickly took a darker turn. Worthless 319 wasn't just talking about politics or random thoughts anymore. He started discussing something much more disturbing. Himself. At first, Reddit users brushed it off. They thought maybe this was some guy who'd taken a psychedelic and thought he had awakened or gotten closer to some higher power. But they were wrong. They didn't realize how serious he was, or the lengths he was willing to go to achieve his goal. A goal no one could quite understand. All we knew was that he believed in some kind of higher powers and was trying to find ways to reach them. What was his purpose? What was driving him? No one really knew. This was pure existential dread, the kind that doesn't fit into any neat box. It's not something you can easily classify. It's a journey into madness that's hard to even comprehend. Though he revealed something far more disturbing in a comment under one of his own posts. I've self-mutilated to near death 3 times, yielding 3 surgeries for the self-mutilation. I've been in a psychiatric wards involuntarily for over 3 months worth of time over 5 separate stays. Every time I have never felt my core being present. It was all too real, and I get lost in the web of my ego. To break it down, Worthless 319 was blurring the lines between spiritual, mental, and physical suffering. He believed that the only way to get closer to God or whatever higher power he was chasing was through pain. At first, it didn't make much sense, but now looking at it from his perspective, it kind of does. He was convinced that suffering, real physical suffering, was the key to awakening something divine inside of him. That's where his actions started to make sense. Terrifying sense. After revealing that small bit of information, a few weeks later, he made another post, giving everyone even more clarity over his actions. If crucifixion was self-done, yielding a crucifixion of the ego and physical body, how would you gain the power/mentality to overcome it? Everyone was worried about him at this point. A user in the comments said, "Please stop hurting yourself." But Worthless 319 had no intentions of listening to anyone. In the same post, he made a few comments that changed everything we knew about him so far. It's hard when all I've done is fail. Every mutation makes me feel like I take 10 steps backwards. It's degrading, humiliating. My genitals look like some absurd cosmic vomit at this point. It's hard to press on. I don't think I can slowly stick a knife through the base of my penis. Shooting it off was nice and quick, but I'm shit out of luck this time around. Now, I wish you are merely making a laugh for yourself. I truly do. Even if it comes at the cost of myself, but know what goes around comes around. I don't quite understand what you mean. You feel I lack sincerity? Picture link. Holy shit, that hit my stomach bad. I thought the pic was blurred until I clicked on it. Holy fuck. Yes, you're right. He had actually mutilated his own genitals, and when users mocked him, he posted an image as proof. A disturbing, undeniable piece of evidence. That image has since been deleted, so don't even think about trying to find it. Later, he made another post saying, "How long does local anesthesia last?" Lidocaine. And in this same post, he tells everyone just how this mutilation happened, and it is just straight up horrifying. A user randomly replied, asking him to consult a doctor for this stuff if he was really going to experiment with himself. To which he said, "I shot my penis 4 times with a revolver, blew apart my left nut and castrated my right nut 8 months after. I have no concerns." So you're saying there's a time when the pain will be dulled a little? He didn't stop there. Worthless 319 kept posting even more disturbing details about his mutilation. I won't go into it though. It's repetitive and honestly just too gruesome. But by now, the entire Reddit community was losing it. People were confused, horrified, and desperate for answers. Why was he doing this to himself? What was the point? Then, one user finally asked him straight up, why? And Worthless 319 responded with something that left everyone speechless. But, why? Commanded to be my higher self to avoid nuclear war with North Korea and institute the second coming of Earth. Fair enough. Thank you for your sacrifice. Anytime. He believed that God himself was commanding him to mutilate his own body in order to save the world. At this point, Worthless 319's account was spiraling into pure terror. It was no longer just a man in crisis, it was something far more disturbing. And it didn't stop there. He started to believe that another act of mutilation was necessary. Another one, commanded by God. But it didn't stop there. In yet another conversation with a user, Worthless 319 revealed something far more terrifying. The post read, "Why would the higher self request something it can't handle yet?" It seemed like he was starting to doubt his last mutilation. Seizing the moment, a user tried to shatter the reality he was living in, but what Worthless 319 said next, it was far more chilling than anyone could have imagined. You'd think shooting your cock 4 times with a .38 special revolver, severing the last slice with a switchblade, sautéing it on the stove whilst bleeding out, then consuming it in 2 halves would be enough for one's soul. But I digress. Yes, this person had consumed one of his own body parts. He clearly needed serious help to get out of this state of insanity, but he never once engaged in any conversations about that, except one time, when a user wrote a comment under one of his posts saying, "This is beautifully said. You obviously have a great deal of insight. I love you too, which is why I'm starting to become worried sick about you. You come to this forum so often talking about your self-harming and self-cannibalism and how God is requesting you continue self-harming. I want to ask you if you are seeking help outside Reddit. I'm glad this community is here for you, but it's not enough. Words on a page are not enough. Not my words, nor your words. Reddit is not a substitute for real change. No matter how pretty our words are and how many upvotes we get, you see the duality of suffering and bliss, of darkness and light. Surely, then you can see that there is no shame in seeking help. With the help of this surprisingly kind individual, who had no problem engaging with someone like Worthless 319, he finally started to open up a little, but still refused to take the help. I really have no one to turn to. I'm alone in this, but I'm really all there is because there's only one consciousness. Most of my spiritual guides have rejected me as a psychotic and damaging due to my self-mutilation. I have spent upwards of 3 months locked in psychiatric wards across the US, medicated with OCD and psychotic drugs. The only problem with me is my love for God, which must be medicated. I'll be fine. I thank you for your support and guidance, but it's truly a terrible loop in darkness to be stuck in. Maybe one day I'll be free. Until then, I will keep hope in my heart instead of fear. This had gone too far. It was taking a toll on everyone, especially him. For a while, he kept posting about how something needed to be done, that time was running out. Then, he made one final post. A warning. A way to prepare everyone for the unimaginable. How to proceed when you only seem to fail. Greetings. I am in the most intense part of the awakening process that is possible. First, I circumcised myself, ended up at the ER. Next, I shot my penis 4 times with a revolver and consumed it after cooking it slightly on a frying pan. I called an ambulance on myself after freaking out and ended up at the ER. During that process, I blew apart my left and they removed it since it was beyond repair. Finally, after months of agonizing depression, I got the courage to sever my remaining testicle, ending up at the ER again. All I have done is follow God's will to crucify myself, but I always seem to fail. I cannot, for the love of God, make it past the obstacles given to me. Now, God has come to me through my intuition, calling me to sever more of my penis. When I look at what's left, it's about 1 centimeter worth of skin bulging out with an empty scrotum attached, and it's baffling that I'm supposed to sever more of it. At this point, I'm basically carving a hole into my body. Please, I'm in the darkest times of my life as Earth nears the end times war, and I have no idea what to do or where to turn. I am so afraid of the pain and blood of doing this all over again, thinking once will be enough. Love and regards, Worthless 319. Edit. If there are any doubts, I can email pictures freely. The post quickly gained traction, flooding with people trying to reach out and make sense of everything. Honestly, all this felt like was a fever dream, absurd, horrifying, and deeply disturbing. During this time period, the user also talked about how he had been taking different kinds of drugs since they helped him. You guessed it, reach God. However, after this post, he made another one. This time he said that he was finally going to perform the last on the coming Saturday. Things had just gotten way more serious. What's the likelihood I survive severing the rest of my penis? I will be attempting it on Saturday, but I'm afraid I might survive. I survived my castration after bleeding for 18 hours and finally seeking medical attention because I wasn't dying. It was clear now. He was going to die. If he went through with mutilating himself in that same area again, he was only carving a hole in his body and bleeding out. The entire Reddit community was frantic, with more and more comments urging him to think about the insanity he was about to commit, but he didn't engage with any of them. Then suddenly, it was Saturday. Yet there was no update from the user himself. Curious about what had happened to him, a user made a post in e/morbid questions. What happened to the guy that was supposed to cut his dick off yesterday? Saturday. He was posting to the subreddit regularly and said yesterday was the day. By this point, most people believed he was just a troll, messing with everyone using dark, twisted humor. But then, to everyone's surprise, he replied. And that reply turned out to be his final post. No one has heard from him since. Looks like he's just living life with his German Shepherd, u/worthless 319. Hopefully he didn't go through with it. It's an old pic I'm reminiscing upon as I'm stuck on a bus for 2+ days to get my revolver. Edit. I'm halfway across the country because I found someone that would murder me by cutting off my dick. But they would have murdered my corpse unwillingly and eaten me, so I opted out. And that's it. No activity on his account since. There were comments asking if he was still alive, but it seems like he truly disappeared. After that, you'd think we'd dial it down a bit, but let's be real. You're not here for light stories, are you? This next one's about a user who claimed to have killed someone and decided to share the whole thing on Reddit. 10 years ago, someone posted a thread on r/askreddit. Serious. Redditors who have killed someone in self-defense. Did you ever recover psychologically? What is it like to live knowing you killed someone regardless you didn't want to do it? On this specific thread, a user named TA_aimtrue decided to share his story, which gets really dark. This is so late that I don't know if it will be seen, but I'll post it anyway. Also using a throwaway because the victim is another Redditor who could be identified through my normal ID. Back in 1995, I lived in a quiet neighborhood in the San Francisco East Bay with my wife of a few years and our 20-month-old daughter. We had a small 3-bedroom, 2-story house, and one of our second-floor bedrooms doubled as my home office. One quiet Saturday morning, I was in my office playing Command & Conquer on my computer with my headphones on, oblivious to the sounds of the outside world. I'd probably been playing for an hour or so when, during one particularly quiet moment, I faintly heard my wife cry out downstairs. Knowing that she was down there with our daughter, I pulled my headphones off to see if she needed help with anything. Until the day I take my last breath, I'll never forget what I heard when I pulled them off. I heard the voice of a man with a thick Mexican accent shout, "Quit yelling, bitch, or I'll fucking cut your head off and fuck your fucking daughter." My daughter was crying hysterically. After that, it was like some switch was thrown in me and my higher brain just shut off. I wasn't making decisions, I just acted. I don't even remember pulling the .45 from the lockbox in my desk. I just remember walking down the stairs slowly, scared as hell that I was going to see my wife dead when I reached the bottom. Instead, when I reached the bottom, I saw my wife half naked, bent over the couch, bleeding from somewhere in her upper body, while being raped from behind by some burly guy with a knife in his hand. He wasn't trying to rape her. He was in the middle of the deed and was probably nearing climax. I never said a word to the guy, not while I was upstairs, not while I was coming down the stairs, and not when I walked into the room. His back was to me, so he had no idea I was even standing there. He was holding his knife in his right hand, so that was the arm I grabbed with my left when I pulled him off. He spun away from her and me with a confused look on his face, and I shot him square in the chest at nearly point-blank range before he had a chance to say a single word. His face went pale as he went onto one knee, and I fired twice more. One hit his neck, and the second missed entirely. I was told later that the first shot was the fatal one. What happened next was always been a point of shame for me. The only thought going through my head at that point was that I couldn't let my daughter watch this man die. Without even checking on my wife, I scooped my daughter up and walked out my front door. As I walked to my driveway, I saw one of my neighbors standing there staring at my house. He'd heard the gunshots. The poor guy went pale when he saw me walk out, and I vaguely remember asking him to hold my daughter while I went in and checked on my wife. The neighbor asked me if I'd shot her, and I told him, no, I shot the man who was raping her. I didn't realize at the time I had the guy's blood spray covering half my body, and that I looked like something out of a horror movie. I then handed him my daughter and my gun. I also have no idea why I gave him my gun, and went back into my house to help my wife. Now, to be fair, this was clearly self-defense. The guy was holding a knife, threatening to kill his wife and daughter. What else was he supposed to do? But the police didn't see it that way. The police and DA gave me some flack about the exact circumstances of the shooting. One of the detectives told me that it was more of an execution than a defense, but in the end they declined to pursue any charges. The man who attacked her turned out to be a guy with serious mental issues who had previously convicted of 2 violent rapes, one of which was against a 9-year-old girl. Under California's then new 3 strikes law, he'd have gone to prison for life if I hadn't killed him. As for recovery, I like to think that I've recovered from it, but it certainly induced a few behavioral changes. To this day, for example, I can't wear headphones that block out background noise. Even after years of counseling, over-ear and noise-canceling headphones give me panic attacks because I can't hear what's happening around me. I found out later that he'd been raping my wife for nearly 10 minutes before I heard him, and that he'd actually told my wife 3 times that he was going to rape my daughter. When he was finished with her, I was sitting 30 feet away and had no idea what was going on, and that fact has fucked with me for years. My wife had a much worse time of it though. In addition to 2 stab wounds to her shoulder and upper arm, and the bruising and injuries from the forceful rape, she ended up having a mental break and took years to fully recover. For the first 6 months, she absolutely could never be in a room by herself. For more than a year, she couldn't be in a house by herself, and she never re-entered the house where this happened. For several years, she'd break out in a sweat when she heard men with deep Hispanic accents talking, because she'd hear his voice again. Even now, decades later, she starts shaking if you try to talk to her about it. She's fine in every other sense, but even discussing it freaks her out. I fucked up that day. I was being too honest with the cops. We've all heard lawyers say that you shouldn't talk to the police about a crime without a lawyer present, and that day I learned why. When I shot the guy in his chest and went to his knee, his whole body was going limp and he dropped the knife. As I learned later, fragments from the first shot had shredded one of his lungs and aorta, and his body was already shutting down. I relayed every detail of the shooting to the police and detectives, who nodded politely until I was done. Then one of them looked at me and said, "So, the guy was on his knee. unarmed and wounded when you shot him the second and third time? The implication of that question pissed me off. I said a few things I shouldn't have, and everything quickly went downhill from there. By the time it got relayed to the DA's office, the story had a white vigilante executes minority vibe. The whole thing went away pretty quickly once his background was revealed, and the autopsy showed that the first shot, which was indisputably self-defense, was the fatal one. In the end, the autopsy showed that he was a dead man after the first shot, so my behavior with the last two was largely irrelevant. If that first shot had not been fatal and the next shot had been, it severed his artery, but was deemed potentially survivable in the autopsy report, my story could have been a very different ending. As for my daughter, she had no effects from it whatsoever. She was so young that she doesn't even remember it, and her view was obscured enough that it didn't seem to cause any trauma. We did take her to see a child psychologist for a while after it happened just to make sure she was okay, but she was given a clean bill of health pretty quickly. The only real impact on her, if any, was my wife's intense paranoia about her safety around strangers for many years. My wife had become convinced that she was going to die, and that this guy was going to kill her baby because she couldn't protect her. It took my wife a long time to get over that, and as a result, my daughter grew up with a bit of a stranger danger complex. She was fine by the time she hit her teens, but as a little girl, she'd run from my wife whenever anyone she didn't know approached her. That it wasn't caused by the rape itself, but by my wife's entirely understandable reaction afterward. Alright guys, that wraps up some terrifying Reddit users. And the last one wasn't a terrifying Reddit user perhaps, but a terrifying Reddit story. That last one was really, all of these were heart-wrenching. First and the last one especially, because, the people made it out and they told their story and it wasn't their fault. Those are the hardest ones. But these videos are really, really interesting for me to make because, they seem like they have more impact. I really think the last installment in the series was my best video ever, and I think this one might take the cake for the best video as well. I really believe in this series, and it was really fun to make. And if you would like to see more in the future, please comment down below. I read every single comment. I appreciate you all. And please like the video if you haven't already, and subscribe to the channel. More videos like this coming in the future. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. And this is Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye.